At 10:59 on the morning of February 20th, 2024, Jesse Vang called 911 from his apartment in Two Rivers, Wisconsin. He said a 3-year-old boy had vanished while Jesse was asleep, but his explanation immediately created a problem. By Jesse's own account, Elijah Vue should not have been able to open the front door. Jesse said that whenever he went to sleep, he secured the apartment with 3 separate barriers: the doorknob lock, the deadbolt, and a security chain positioned near the top of the door. Think about that for a second. Elijah was 3 years old and approximately 3 feet tall. Even if he could somehow manage the first 2 locks, there was still that upper chain. So how does a child disappear from behind a door he supposedly cannot open? That question turned Jesse's apartment into the center of the case almost immediately. But before detectives could answer it, they had to find Elijah. The photographs distributed that day showed a little boy with dark blonde hair and brown eyes. Authorities said he had a birthmark on his left knee. He was last reported wearing gray pants, a dark, long-sleeved shirt, and red and green dinosaur shoes. He might also have been carrying a red and white plaid blanket. Those details matter in any missing child case. A pair of bright dinosaur shoes might catch someone's eye. A plaid blanket could be visible on a sidewalk, inside a vehicle, or near a building. And when the child is only 3, even the smallest identifying feature can become important. According to Jesse's initial account, Elijah had been staying with him on and off for roughly a month. On the morning Elijah was reported missing, Jesse said he first got his own son ready for school. His son, who is a minor, was placed on the school bus at about 7:30 a.m. Jesse said he then returned to the apartment. Elijah had reportedly been asleep on a futon in the living room. At around 8 o'clock, Jesse said he woke him, gave him cereal without milk, and brought him into the bedroom. Jesse later fell asleep. Approximately 3 hours passed. When Jesse woke up, he said Elijah was gone. Jesse searched for him and then made the 911 call at 10:59. That was the story investigators had to begin testing. Elijah had been inside the apartment, Jesse had fallen asleep, and sometime during that window, the child had disappeared. No clear explanation was offered for how Elijah could have overcome every lock Jesse claimed he normally used. And there was no immediate public account of anyone seeing Elijah leave. Jesse's son was the only other person investigators knew of who might have been able to confirm parts of that morning. But he was a child too, and nothing about his possible knowledge should be assumed. He could potentially help establish limited details, whether Elijah had been in the apartment, what the morning routine looked like, or when Jesse returned from the bus stop. But that did not mean he had witnessed the disappearance itself. For detectives, the immediate task was much simpler and much more urgent. A 3-year-old was missing in Wisconsin in February, reportedly wearing relatively light clothing and perhaps carrying only a blanket. Police arrived at Jesse's apartment, confirmed that Elijah was not there, and began searching. Roughly an hour and a half after the 911 call, an Amber Alert went out across Wisconsin. That escalation was fast. Amber Alerts are designed for cases in which authorities believe a child is in serious danger, and public attention could help locate them. Yet police did not initially explain whether they believed Elijah had been abducted, had somehow walked away, or had been taken from the apartment by someone known to him. And that silence stood in sharp contrast to the contradiction already sitting inside Jesse's account. If the doorknob, deadbolt, and upper chain were secured, Elijah could not simply wander outside. But if the door was not secured, then one of the most important details in Jesse's explanation was already in doubt. When Two Rivers Police made their first public appearance, Chief Ben Meinert promised that the department was using every available resource. He asked the public to report anything that might help. Reporters, though, wanted an answer to the same basic question hanging over the apartment. Why had this case risen to the level of an Amber Alert?
Wednesday night, Two Rivers Police going before the cameras for the first time in the search for 3-year-old Elijah Vue.
I assure them and the public that we are doing everything in our power to bring Elijah home safely.
Investigators pleading for help from the public.
Anyone with any information, no matter how insignificant it may seem, please come forward and share that.
But not sharing any new information or answering questions from 12 News.
Can you talk a little bit about why this rose to the level of an Amber Alert? Just talk about certain...
Dozens of community members, many who don't even know the family, searching for Elijah Wednesday.
Where is he?
The boy reported missing Tuesday morning by what police are calling an adult caretaker, family heartsick and worried.
Words can't explain what we're going through. I know our hearts are very heavy right now at this time. We're all trying to be very hopeful.
Elijah was not accused of one specific act that required intervention. According to the adults' own statements, he had been sent away because they believed a 3-year-old needed to learn discipline, and that going home should be treated as a privilege. Think about that phrase for a second. Going home. A privilege. Elijah's mother, Katrina Bauer, lived in Wisconsin Dells. Jesse Vang lived roughly 3 hours away in Two Rivers. Katrina described Jesse to investigators as the stricter person in their relationship, the rule enforcer, the one she believed could teach Elijah how to behave. According to the account summarized in court documents, she wanted Jesse to teach her 3-year-old how to be a man. The arrangement had apparently begun taking shape around Thanksgiving of 2023. Katrina told investigators that she and Jesse had discussed Elijah's behavior, and Jesse had said she needed to try harder to correct it. By January 2024, Katrina had started sending Elijah to stay with him for that purpose. Then came the February stay. Katrina said she handed Elijah over to Jesse in Fond du Lac, a meeting point roughly between Wisconsin Dells and Two Rivers. Elijah was supposed to remain with Jesse for several days, then return to his mother on February 23rd. Instead, he would be reported missing on February 20th. What happened during those 8 days matters because Katrina and Jesse described the same disciplinary arrangement in very different ways. Katrina's version sounded comparatively mild. She referred to Elijah praying, saying he was sorry, and reviewing 4 rules he was expected to memorize. She also reportedly told investigators that she had given Jesse broad authority to discipline Elijah, apart from identifying certain methods she did not want him to use. But Jesse's own description went much further. During questioning, Jesse characterized Elijah's stay as a form of punishment for bad behavior. He said the goal was to make the child understand that he needed to behave at Jesse's apartment and at home. And then he used that phrase, going home was supposed to be a privilege. Investigators asked what Elijah had actually done. Jesse could not identify a serious or specific incident. The example he gave was that Elijah would get into things. But that is what 3-year-olds do. They touch things. They test limits. They have tantrums. They need help eating, dressing, and using the bathroom. Their impulse control is still developing, and they cannot process punishment the way an older child can. That context doesn't settle what happened inside Jesse's apartment, but it does matter when evaluating the behavior Elijah was supposedly being punished for. Jesse told investigators that Elijah spent much of his time in what he called boot camp. The child would be made to stand for extended periods. Sometimes, Jesse said, for 1 to 3 hours. While standing, Elijah was expected to pray or repeatedly say, "I'm sorry, Mommy." This was not a brief pause meant to help a toddler calm down. Common guidance for timeouts at that age is measured in minutes, not hours, often roughly 1 minute for each year of the child's age. The idea is simple. A very young child has a limited ability to connect a consequence to something that happened long before. After enough time passes, the lesson disappears. Only the restriction remains. At Jesse's apartment, those restrictions allegedly extended beyond standing. Jesse said Elijah had one toy there, something resembling a toolbox that he had received around Christmas. But according to Jesse's interview, Elijah was not allowed to play with it during the February stay. He was also denied ordinary activities because he was considered to be in punishment. Not for 3 minutes. Not even for 1 afternoon. According to the adult's timeline, that status followed him through an 8-day stay. And if Elijah resisted, became tired, or tried to sit down, Jesse said he used an ultimatum. "Do you want cold water?" Jesse told investigators Elijah did not like cold water, though he claimed not to know why. Yet messages described in court documents suggest he understood exactly what effect it had. Investigators said that on February 17th, Jesse sent Katrina 2 messages, 10 minutes apart, one at 6:39 p.m. and another at 6:49. In those messages, he reportedly expressed anger because Elijah's diaper was overfilled with urine and feces. Jesse said he had responded by giving the child a cold shower. Elijah was now clean, he wrote, but scared. That message raises an obvious question. Why was a 3-year-old being punished over a diaper in the first place? Jesse told investigators Elijah was not toilet trained, something that can be entirely normal at that age. He also said he generally changed Elijah's diaper at least once a day. At least once. That answer alone created concerns about whether the diaper was being changed frequently enough. and whether Elijah was being blamed for the consequences when it was not. The same uncertainty surrounded food. When detectives asked what Elijah ate at the apartment, Jesse listed pizza, noodles, cereal, and similar foods. He also said Elijah was still being bottle-fed and that he was trying to move him onto regular food, but the interview, as summarized in the court documents, offered few other details about Elijah's meals. None of those statements had yet been tested at trial. They came from interviews, text messages, and allegations laid out in court filings. But taken together, they gave investigators a picture of a toddler who depended entirely on adults for food, hygiene, comfort, and safety. While being punished for behaviors he may not have been developmentally capable of controlling. Then there was Jesse's description of their relationship. During his interview, Jesse initially said Elijah was afraid of him. Almost immediately, he tried to revise that. Elijah did not fear him, Jesse suggested. He respected him. But fear and respect are not interchangeable, especially when the person being discussed is 3 years old. And Jesse's own reported methods: hours of standing, repeated apologies, no toys, no normal activities, and the threat of cold water made that attempted correction difficult to ignore. By the end of the interview, the broad outline was no longer in dispute. Elijah had not simply been visiting Jesse. He had been sent there specifically to be disciplined. The adult's own accounts established that much of his 8-day stay was spent under severe and prolonged restrictions. The question was no longer whether the arrangement was unusually harsh. It was what condition Elijah was in by the final night. Jesse gave detectives an hour-by-hour version of that night, but the closer they examined it, the more the story depended on his word alone. Jesse said he spent Elijah's final reported night watching Ready Player One after drinking 3 Budweisers and taking a muscle relaxer to help him sleep. Elijah was not allowed to watch. He was standing in punishment beside the bed. According to Jesse, he had changed Elijah's diaper sometime around 8 or 9 that evening. Then he ordered the 3-year-old to stand either in a corner or near the bed. Jesse estimated that this punishment lasted 2 to 3 hours. And when investigators asked what happened if Elijah became tired or tried to sit down, Jesse described the warning he used. "Do you want the cold water?" That threat matters because Jesse had already acknowledged using cold water as punishment. In text messages sent to Katrina on February 17th, he said he had given Elijah a cold shower after the child overfilled his diaper. Jesse wrote that Elijah was clean, but scared, so Elijah knew what the warning meant. Jesse then appeared to realize how his description sounded. He tried to soften it. Elijah was fine, he said. His knees were not shaking. He was not about to fall over. But think about that defense for a second. Jesse was not denying that a 3-year-old had been made to stand for hours. He was arguing that the punishment was acceptable because the child had not visibly collapsed. Then came Jesse's account of the next morning. On February 20th, Jesse said he woke up and prepared his own son for school. At that point, he claimed he saw Elijah asleep on the futon in the living room. Jesse took his son to the bus stop, where the bus reportedly arrived around 7:30 a.m. When Jesse returned, he said he woke Elijah and gave him dry cereal for breakfast. No milk. Afterward, Jesse brought him into the bedroom and told him to stand near the foot or corner of the bed and pray. Elijah still was not allowed to do anything fun because, in Jesse's words, he remained in timeout. Jesse also said he did not change Elijah's diaper that morning. His explanation was not that Elijah did not need changing. Jesse said he was too tired. Then, according to his account, Jesse fell asleep. At 10:59 a.m., roughly 3 hours after the school bus trip, he called 911 and reported that Elijah was gone. That gap became one of the central problems in the timeline. Jesse claimed Elijah was alive after he returned from the bus stop. But between that claimed sighting and the emergency call, there was no independent adult witness inside the apartment. The person supplying the sequence was the same person investigators were now questioning about Elijah's treatment. And Jesse's was not the only account beginning to shift. When detectives first spoke with Katrina, she said she had dropped Elijah off 8 days earlier in Fond du Lac, approximately halfway between Wisconsin Dells and Two Rivers. She planned to collect him on February 23rd. She also initially said she had not been in the Two Rivers area during those 8 days. That was not the account she ultimately gave. After detectives examined information concerning her whereabouts, Katrina acknowledged that she had traveled to Two Rivers on February 16th. She said she saw Elijah on the couch that night and left early the following morning. Then her timeline changed again. Katrina admitted she had also been in the area on February 14th. Now, changing statements do not, by themselves, establish what happened to Elijah. They do not tell us when he disappeared, how he left the apartment, or whether Katrina witnessed anything connected to it. But they matter because investigators were trying to establish the last reliable sighting of a missing child. If Katrina had seen Elijah during that 8-day stay, then the date, time, and condition in which she saw him could help narrow the timeline. And if detectives had to confront her with location information before she acknowledged those visits, they had a reason to question what else might have been omitted. Outside Jesse's apartment, the investigation was already becoming visible. Officers focused on the multi-unit complex, collected material from a dumpster, and bagged a small slip-on shoe that resembled the type Elijah had reportedly been wearing. K-9 teams worked nearby while residents moved through the neighborhood calling his name. News cameras captured that activity and the community's growing questions.
The cemetery is where law enforcement has set up a mole command unit for the night, but we've seen the community walking up and down these sidewalks, most who don't even know Elijah, calling out his name, searching for him. Take a listen. Elijah! Crowds scanned sidewalks and yards, yelling for the missing 3-year-old. 12 News cameras capturing law enforcement focused on a multi-unit apartment building, collecting evidence from the dumpster, and collecting a small slip-on shoe into an evidence bag. It's the same kind of shoe officials say Elijah had on the last time anyone reported seeing him. K-9 officers are scanning the area for any scent trail that might lead to Elijah. Tonight we heard from people in the community who had been outside searching for hours.
As a mom of 3, my first thought was devastation. I would certainly hope that if it was my own child, my community would step in just as much as everybody is right now for this little boy. Working in healthcare, knowing what can happen being out for this long is definitely a scary thought for a little boy who's all by himself for almost 12 hours.
So, Kendall, police did not indicate someone took Elijah, nor did they provide a vehicle description. So how is this case elevated to the level of an Amber Alert?
Well, Deanna, we put that question directly to Two Rivers Police and the Wisconsin Department of Justice. So far, neither agency is giving an answer to that question. We're going to continue pressing them for an answer.
While police searched dumpsters, rivers, roads, and a landfill, strangers walked through Two Rivers calling Elijah's name. The public was searching for a living child, but the locations investigators chose were creating a darker fear. The response grew almost immediately beyond the Two Rivers Police Department. Wisconsin state investigators joined the case. So did the FBI, county agencies, local fire departments, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and A Child Missing. K-9 teams worked on the ground. Drones and helicopters searched from above. Boats moved onto the waterways. Officers and agents spread out on foot. This was no longer one apartment building and a few surrounding blocks. It was a coordinated search involving agencies at nearly every level. Officers canvassed neighborhoods door to door, asking residents whether they had seen anything unusual. People were urged to review footage from doorbell cameras and home surveillance systems. They were asked to inspect yards, sheds, garages, and other parts of their property. And police repeated one message: report it even if it seems insignificant. Because in a case like this, the detail someone dismisses, a figure passing a camera, a vehicle in the wrong place, an object beside a road, might be the one thing that changes the direction of the investigation. Outside Jesse's apartment complex, reporters watched investigators examine the building and search a dumpster. They also saw officers collect a small slip-on shoe and place it inside an evidence bag. Authorities did not publicly say whether it belonged to Elijah. That lack of information created a strange split. Law enforcement spoke carefully, revealing almost nothing that could compromise the case. Meanwhile, volunteers walked along sidewalks and through yards, calling out for a 3-year-old who might be frightened, cold, or hiding. Elijah! Again and again, his name carried through the neighborhood. By then, winter itself had become part of the emergency. Elijah had reportedly disappeared in relatively light clothing, possibly carrying a red and white plaid blanket. The East and West Twin Rivers run through the community and give Two Rivers its name. Search crews focused heavily on those waterways, where cold temperatures, moving water, and difficult access made every passing hour matter. But police would not publicly speculate about whether Elijah had actually walked out of the apartment on his own. They would not explain how an Amber Alert fit the locked door account. And they would not say whether they believed anyone else had been involved. As the search entered its second week, reward money was offered for information. Manitowoc County Crime Stoppers announced $1,000. The FBI then offered up to $15,000 for information leading investigators to Elijah, or leading to the arrest of anyone involved in his disappearance. That announcement was followed by a plea from Elijah's grandfather. He thanked the officers, firefighters, residents, and volunteers who had spent days searching. Then he asked them not to stop.
Right now, breaking news, the FBI is now offering a reward up to $15,000 in the search for a missing boy in Manitowoc County.
3-year-old Elijah Vue was reported missing 1 week ago today. His disappearance sparked an Amber Alert.
Do police believe Elijah left that residence on his own?
Again, I can't speculate. I will say that, again, when we're talking about the Amber Alert that we put out, people wanted me to speculate on an abduction versus endangered. At this point, what I do know is a child was missing in cold temperatures, winter temperatures, in relatively little clothing and possibly a blanket. That's what we're searching for, and we'll continue to search for until I get some answers.
To anyone who may have information about Elijah's whereabouts, we plead with you to please come forward. Your courage, your compassion, your willingness to speak up may hold the key to Elijah's safe return.
And Kendall, we also learned today the FBI pitched in with a reward.
Joyce, that $15,000 reward from the FBI comes after the Manitowoc County Crime Stoppers offered $1,000 over the weekend. Now, that reward money is for any information that leads to Elijah or the arrest of anyone who might be involved in his disappearance. I asked the police chief tonight if he believes there might be anyone else involved. He didn't answer that question tonight, Joyce.
Talking English is not good, so I want everybody to be patient with me. So, and I just try that I can. So, right now, I would like to thank you for everybody to help my family to search for my grandson whole week to today. So, everybody know that we are really hurt. So, and I want to thank you for the officer, or all the fire department people, all the people living in two cities here, help us to search for our grandson, our baby for 1 week right now. So, yeah, I really thank you for everybody. So far right now, so I want everybody to continue to help us to look for my grandson. I want my grandson to be home with my family. So I want everybody to continue, don't stop, just searching for my baby Elijah. We want him to be safe and with my family, and we love my grandson. Thank you, Father.
The search for 3-year-old Elijah Vue, investigators are bringing in more tools. Meanwhile, the Vue family pushing onward with its own search.
We are outside McGee Elementary School. As the search for Elijah Vue expands, this has become a staging area for law enforcement. We've seen local and state investigators and even FBI personnel throughout the day. One new element Saturday is the use of air resources in the ongoing effort to locate this toddler. Law enforcement wraps up its search Saturday without finding Elijah Vue. But they had more help on this day from above as Wings of Hope Wisconsin and North Star Rescue joined the effort. Two Rivers Police Chief Ben Meinert says the focus was on waterways, particularly the East and West Twin Rivers that give this community its name.
Mentally, emotionally, both me and my family were all drained.
On the ground, about 10 minutes to the south, members of the Vue family combed through a wooded area outside Manitowoc. Elijah's uncle, Orson Vue, says the family appreciates the outreach from strangers organizing their own searches to a flood of supportive messages.
I think I speak for myself and my family when I say we are so grateful for all of you and the authorities that are working on this investigation.
Vue says he followed along Friday when Elijah's mother, Katrina Bauer, had a bail hearing on child neglect charges. He says the Vue family hasn't seen Elijah since he was about 6 months old.
And to see him like this, again for the first time in how many years. It's gut-wrenching, heartbreaking, all those bad emotions.
Prosecutors say Bauer gave Elijah to Jesse Vang, who is also facing child neglect charges. The reason was for discipline, and prosecutors say Bauer knew about the, quote, tactics Vang would use, but did not specify what that meant. At this point, Vue says the family is withholding judgment.
We're not going to rule anything out, but we're not going to, just come out and put blame on one particular person and say they did this or that when nobody really even knows anything yet.
Both Bauer and Vang are set to appear in court again on Monday afternoon. The police chief, Ben Meinert, here in Two Rivers, confirms the investigation has gone beyond northeast Wisconsin. The search is also taking place in Wisconsin Dells, where Bauer lives. Reporting in Two Rivers, AJ Bayatpour.
It's now been 50 hours since authorities issued an Amber Alert for Elijah Vue. News Chopper 12 flew over Calumet County today as the FBI and police combed through a landfill in Hilbert.
That's nearly 40 miles west of Two Rivers, where police say Elijah was last seen. That's where 12 News' Kendall Keys is live tonight. Kendall, authorities have 2 people in custody.
Elijah's mother and another man who lives in this apartment building where investigators have been searching and collecting evidence. Right now, both are in custody. I'm told both are held on child neglect charges. The search for missing 3-year-old Elijah Vue crossed county lines Thursday. News Chopper 12 capturing exclusive video of FBI agents in hazmat suits searching a landfill in Calumet County. Heavy machinery working near a blue tent. The FBI telling 12 News they're assisting Two Rivers police in their investigation of the missing boy, but would not say what, if anything, they found.
Chief, do you have the suspects right now? And where are the mother and father in all of this?
Sorry, we're not going to take any questions at this time. Thank you.
The search follows a news conference Wednesday night with Two Rivers police where investigators refused to take questions and revealed very little about the investigation. 12 News learning police arrested Elijah's mother, Katrina Bauer, and another man early Wednesday morning. They're currently being held on child neglect charges.
Nobody's confirming anything at this point. So we're just kind of like lingering around, and hopefully we can get some answer from anybody at this point.
The arrangement was presented as a solution to Elijah's behavior, but the history surrounding both adults raised a more uncomfortable question. Who had decided Jesse was an appropriate person to enforce rules on a toddler? Because Jesse did not enter this situation without a record. The author's research identified a lengthy criminal history that included cases or charges involving criminal damage, battery by a prisoner, manufacturing cocaine, cocaine possession, fleeing an officer, resisting or obstructing an officer, and bail jumping. A prior child abuse case was also attributed to him in the available records. Now, we need to be precise here. An arrest is not a conviction. A charge is an allegation until it is resolved in court, and a person's criminal history does not prove that person caused a later disappearance or death. Jesse has pleaded not guilty in the case involving Elijah, and that case has not yet gone before a jury. But his background still matters for a narrower reason. Katrina was not choosing between 2 strangers with no known history. According to the case described in court filings, she selected Jesse to become the enforcer for her 3-year-old son. She allegedly gave him significant freedom to decide how that discipline would work. So investigators were bound to ask what she knew about Jesse, not only about his record, but about what he was already doing to Elijah. And Katrina's own history adds another complicated layer. Elijah's older sister was born in May 2017. Elijah was born in 2020. Their father, identified in the author's draft as Jimmy, remained in a relationship with Katrina until around February 2021. Katrina later posted publicly about that relationship. In a TikTok video uploaded in March 2023, she shared photographs of bruises and other injuries that she said Jimmy had inflicted on her. The point of the video appeared to be recovery. She was showing where she had been, what she said she had survived, and how far she believed she had come after leaving. That history deserves to be treated with care. Experiencing domestic abuse can leave someone isolated, financially unstable, and struggling to rebuild. It may help explain what Katrina's life looked like during that period, but it does not answer what happened to Elijah 3 years later. Jimmy, meanwhile, faced a separate criminal case. He was arrested in 2021 and later went to trial in October 2022. According to the author's research, he was convicted of offenses that included physically harming a child under circumstances carrying a high probability of great harm, possessing a firearm as a convicted felon, battery, disorderly conduct, possession of THC with intent to distribute, and possession of methamphetamine. He was incarcerated and later pursued an appeal. But Jimmy was not identified as being inside Jesse's apartment when Elijah disappeared. His convictions belong to the family's background, not to the timeline of February 20th, 2024. That distinction matters. Otherwise, a troubling history can start to feel like an answer when it is not one. After Katrina left Jimmy, she said she experienced housing instability. In April 2021, she lost custody of both children. They entered foster care. Then, in a social media post from March 2022, Katrina said they were scheduled to return home on April 14th of that year. So by her own public account, she had spent roughly a year separated from them before regaining custody. Later posts suggest that parenting remained difficult. Elijah's older sister is on the autism spectrum, and Katrina reached out online for help managing intense meltdowns and behavior she described as violent. She wrote that she felt physically and emotionally drained and that she sometimes had little energy left for anything else. Asking for support is not evidence of neglect, and autism itself is not the problem here. Parents seek advice every day, especially when a child has needs they are struggling to understand or meet. Reaching out can be the responsible thing to do. What those posts do show is that Katrina described herself as overwhelmed. At one point, she said the situation had reached a stage where she was frequently yelling. That gives us context, but only context. There were also claims from a woman who said she had once lived below Katrina's apartment. She alleged that residents heard repeated yelling and raised concerns about how the children were being treated. According to that account, police were called more than once, but responding officers did not identify anything that required action. None of that has the same evidentiary weight as a phone record, a text recovered by investigators, surveillance footage, or a sworn court filing. We do not know enough to independently verify the poster's identity, every incident she described, or what officers actually observed. So it would be irresponsible to present those claims as established fact. And honestly, that is one of the hardest things about a case like this. Once a child disappears, every old post and every secondhand story gets pulled into public view. Some details may eventually matter. Others may be incomplete, exaggerated, or completely unrelated. The challenge is knowing the difference. The decision at the center of this case, however, does not depend on neighborhood rumors. According to investigators, Katrina knew Jesse used cold water as a disciplinary threat or punishment. Messages recovered by police reportedly showed Jesse telling her that he had given Elijah a cold shower after the child overfilled his diaper. Katrina also allegedly knew that Jesse used prolonged standing and that Elijah had been sent there specifically for what the adults called correction. Still, the arrangement continued. Elijah remained with Jesse for 8 days. That is where the legal responsibilities of the two adults begin to separate. Prosecutors' allegations against Jesse concern the treatment he directly imposed while Elijah was in his care. The allegations against Katrina focus in part on what she knew and whether she knowingly left her child in dangerous conditions. One is about alleged direct conduct. The other is about the alleged decision to place Elijah there and allow the arrangement to continue. Elijah's relatives were more restrained than much of the online discussion. His uncle, Elijah Vue, said the family was not prepared to single out one person or assign blame before they knew what had happened. They were exhausted. They wanted answers. But they were not willing to turn uncertainty into certainty just because the public wanted an immediate conclusion. The background did not prove how Elijah disappeared. It did clarify why investigators focused so intensely on neglect, the disciplinary arrangement, and what Katrina allegedly knew about Jesse's methods. It also showed that this case could not be reduced to one unexplained morning behind a locked apartment door. For months, however, prosecutors still lacked the one discovery that could transform a missing child case into a homicide case. On September 7th, 2024, that changed in woods near Camp Manitou. Nearly 7 months after the Amber Alert, a person on private wooded property found human remains more than 3 miles from Jesse's apartment. The search for Elijah was over, but the most important forensic question remained unanswered. What happened to him? Elijah had disappeared on February 20th, 2024. Through the rest of winter, then spring, and into summer, his face remained on missing person notices. His name stayed in public appeals. The FBI's reward of up to $15,000 remained part of the effort to generate information, alongside the earlier reward offered through Manitowoc County Crime Stoppers. But time changes the shape of a missing child case. During those first hours, People had searched yards and sidewalks hoping to spot a little boy in dinosaur shoes, perhaps carrying his red and white plaid blanket. As the weeks became months, that immediate hope had to coexist with a much harder reality. Investigators still had no publicly confirmed explanation for how Elijah could have left the apartment, where he had gone, or what had happened after his last reported sighting. Then came September 7th. Someone on private property near Camp Manitou, in a wooded area outside the immediate apartment neighborhood, discovered human remains. The location was more than 3 miles from Jesse's home in Two Rivers. Authorities recovered the remains and began the process of determining whether they belonged to the child the community had been searching for since February. They did. Authorities formally identified the remains as Elijah Vue. With that confirmation, the investigation crossed a line it could never cross back over. This was no longer only a search for a missing 3-year-old. It was now an investigation into his death, and into how his body reached those woods. The medical examiner classified Elijah's death as a homicide, but the means of death was listed as unspecified. That distinction matters, so let's slow down for a second. In a medical examiner's findings, homicide means the death was attributed to the actions of another person. It does not, by itself, identify that person, and it does not automatically prove the criminal offense of murder. A medical classification answers one kind of question: whether another person's actions caused or contributed to the death. Criminal responsibility is a separate question, built through evidence and decided in court. And publicly, the medical finding left several major gaps. It did not explain the exact mechanism that caused Elijah's death. It did not establish a precise time of death. It did not provide the full sequence of events between Elijah's time in Jesse's care and the discovery near Camp Manitou. It confirmed the darkest part of the case, but it did not fill in the hours that mattered most. That is where the prosecution's theory begins to take shape. According to court filings and statements from prosecutors, the case is not based on one single piece of evidence. It is built from categories of information that investigators argue should be read together: what Jesse and Katrina said, the alleged inconsistencies in those accounts, phone and location data, surveillance material, physical evidence, and the timeline of Elijah's care before he was reported missing. Each category has limits on its own. A phone can show activity or location information, but that data still needs context. Surveillance footage can place a person or vehicle in a particular area at a particular time, but an image alone does not establish what happened outside the frame. Physical evidence can connect places, objects, or people, but its meaning depends on how it was collected and interpreted. And statements can become important when they conflict with other evidence. But a jury still has to decide which conflicts are meaningful. That is especially important with any vehicle or surveillance images connected to the case. Unless a court filing establishes exactly what an image proves, it should be treated as an investigative lead, not a complete transport route. A photograph does not show what happened before it was taken or after the subject left the camera's view. It certainly does not let us invent the missing sequence. Still, the case prosecutors eventually filed was far more serious than the one the public first heard about. During the opening days of the search, Jesse was being held on child neglect allegations. Katrina faced a party to child neglect allegation and counts of obstructing an officer. Those early charges reflected what investigators believed they could support at that stage, while Elijah was still officially missing and searches were still underway. The discovery in September, the homicide ruling, and the evidence developed over the following investigation changed the legal picture. Jesse later faced allegations including physical abuse of a child causing death, hiding a corpse, and related offenses. The charging theory attributes direct conduct to him during the period when Elijah was in his care. In other words, prosecutors are not merely alleging that Jesse failed to supervise or protect Elijah. They are alleging actions connected to Elijah's death and the concealment of his body. Katrina's later charges follow a different theory. They include neglect-related allegations, among them chronic neglect resulting in death. Prosecutors' case against her focuses on her decisions and alleged failures as Elijah's mother, placing him in Jesse's care for discipline, what she allegedly knew about the conditions there, and whether she failed to intervene despite that knowledge. That is not the same allegation as personally committing the physical acts prosecutors attribute to Jesse. But the state's theory is that her alleged neglect contributed to the circumstances that ended in Elijah's death. And none of that is a verdict. Both Jesse Vang and Katrina Bohr have pleaded not guilty. The charging documents describe the prosecution's allegations, not facts already established beyond a reasonable doubt. The defense will have the opportunity to challenge the timeline, the interpretation of the digital and physical evidence, the reliability of statements, and the claimed connection between each defendant's conduct and Elijah's death. So the discovery near Camp Manitou resolved two devastating questions. It established where Elijah had ultimately been left, and the medical examiner concluded that his death was a homicide. But it did not publicly reveal exactly how he died. It did not completely reconstruct how he reached that wooded property. And it did not determine which parts of the prosecution's theory a jury will ultimately believe. That leaves the case balanced between two very different kinds of certainty: a medical ruling that Elijah's death involved another person, and criminal accusations that still have to survive a courtroom. The public has already seen Amber Alerts, searches, arrests, recovered remains, and homicide charges. What it has not seen is the evidence tested in front of a jury, and that distinction matters. The case is still moving through pretrial proceedings in Manitowoc County. Katrina Bauer and Jesse Vang have both pleaded not guilty, and their joint trial is currently scheduled to begin on April 14th, 2027. That date remains subject to further court orders or scheduling changes. In a case this complex, with two defendants, extensive records, and evidence gathered across many months, delays are always possible. So, as of now, there is no verdict. There has not been a trial. And the charging documents, no matter how detailed or disturbing, are not the same thing as facts proven beyond a reasonable doubt. That leaves us with three separate layers of information. First, there are documented facts. Elijah was placed in Jesse's care. Jesse reported him missing on February 20th, 2024. A massive search followed. Elijah's remains were discovered near Camp Manitou on September 7th, more than 3 miles from Jesse's apartment. The medical examiner classified his death as a homicide by unspecified means. Second, there are allegations contained in criminal complaints and arguments made by prosecutors. Those allegations explain why Katrina faces neglect-related charges, including chronic neglect resulting in death, and why Jesse faces charges that include physical abuse causing death and hiding a corpse. Then there is the third layer, the one that does not exist yet. What prosecutors can actually prove in court after the defense challenges the evidence, witnesses are questioned, and jurors receive instructions on the law. Those three layers cannot be blended together. A charge is not a conviction. An allegation is not a verdict. Katrina and Jesse are entitled to the presumption of innocence unless and until the state proves each charge beyond a reasonable doubt. Saying that does not minimize what happened to Elijah. It is simply the legal position of the case as it stands. And because Katrina and Jesse are expected to be tried together, the court may face some difficult questions before a jury even begins deliberating. A joint trial allows one jury to hear the case involving both defendants. That can avoid repeating the same witnesses, timelines, and forensic evidence in two separate courtrooms. But it can also create complications. Some evidence may apply strongly to one defendant and only indirectly, or not at all, to the other. A statement may be admissible against the person who made it, but restricted in how it can be considered against the co-defendant. And if their defenses point in different directions, the court may have to decide whether those positions can be presented fairly in the same trial. That does not tell us what either defense will argue. Those strategies have not yet been fully tested in public, but it shows why the pretrial stage matters. The judge is not just setting dates. The court is determining what evidence the jury may hear, how it may be used, and whether the two cases can proceed together without compromising either defendant's rights. The central disputes are already visible. What was Elijah's physical condition during the 8 days he spent with Jesse? How reliable is Jesse's timeline for the night of February 19th and the morning of February 20th? What did Katrina know about the disciplinary methods being used, and when did she know it? What did the digital records and surveillance evidence establish? And what can they not establish? Then there is the geographic question. How did Elijah move from the area of Jesse's apartment to the wooded property near Camp Manitou? That question pulls us all the way back to the locked door. Jesse said he secured the apartment with the doorknob lock, the deadbolt, and the security chain whenever he slept. His account was that Elijah disappeared while he was asleep, but the discovery in September did not explain whether Elijah was alive on the morning of February 20th. It did not establish publicly when he left the apartment, how he left, or who knew where he had been taken. Maybe evidence presented at trial will narrow that gap. Maybe phone data, surveillance footage, witness testimony, forensic findings, or the defendant's own statements will provide part of the route. But right now, the complete path from that apartment to those woods is not part of the public record. And that is the uncomfortable reality at the end of this case. For now. we know where Elijah was eventually found. We do not yet have a complete, proven account of how he got there. During the first days of the search, the words everyone used were rescue, safe return, and bring him home. Police asked for information that might lead to Elijah alive. Volunteers walked miles through winter conditions. His family pleaded for people not to stop looking. 7 months later, bring him home meant something entirely different. It is easy, after so many court filings and allegations, to see Elijah only as the center of an evidence chart. A date, a location, a name in a criminal complaint. But look at the family photographs. Elijah smiling. Elijah secured in a car seat. Elijah near a Christmas tree. Elijah playing. He was 3 years old. He was not a disciplinary problem to be solved or a timeline to be reconstructed. He was a child who depended entirely on adults to feed him, change him, protect him, and speak for him. Now, nearly every part of his final days has to be described by the adults around him or reconstructed from evidence he could never provide himself. The disappearance of Elijah Vue has become a pending criminal case. But there is still no verdict, and there is still no complete public account of his final hours. The next major answers, if they come, will have to emerge through evidence examined in court. If you want verified updates as the case moves toward the scheduled April 14th, 2027 trial, subscribe so you do not miss them. And in the comments, tell me which documented contradiction you believe will matter most to a jury. Please keep that discussion focused on confirmed information. Do not contact or harass anyone connected to the case, and do not turn unsupported accusations into facts. Elijah was found, but the route from a locked apartment to the woods near Camp Manitou remains incomplete in the public record. Until the evidence is tested at trial, the case ends where it began, with an adult's account, a child who could not explain what happened, and a question the locked door never answered.